Okay, we're live. I don't feel like this, is this mic on? Can you hear me? Okay, welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting. If you would just take a moment and silence your cell phones. Also, there is a sign-up sheet out in the hall. If you would like to speak on any item on the agenda, please sign up outside in the hall. If you get halfway through this meeting and decide you want to speak on something that you didn't already sign up for, feel free at any time to go out there and sign up, and it will pop up on my screen that you've signed up under our new handy-dandy system. And if you will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our first item is a proclamation in honor of three folks that are receiving the Neighborhood Volunteer of the Year Awards. And we've got the chair of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee here, Babette Mays, to help us make these presentations. So please come forward. And the folks who are receiving the awards, please come forward. Councilwoman Roney is going to help hand these out. And as the liaison to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and I am going to read these. Okay, it's always kind of weird where you're supposed to stand, but one of these cameras will pick you up. All right, the Neighborhood Advisory Committee voted on October 24th to recognize these three folks, and I would love if you want to talk a little bit about the process. How do you pick people? And here, use this.
All right. I know I only have a few minutes, but I'm going to read it, because if I don't read it, I'll say more than I'm supposed to. The Neighborhood Volunteer of the Year Award was initiated in 2017 by the Neighborhood Advisory Committee. The award is to recognize and honor local volunteers who have demonstrated significant and positive contributions towards a neighborhood association and our commitment to strengthen city neighborhoods through volunteer time, talents, and service. They are our unsung heroes. The Neighborhood Advisory Committee voted on October the 24th to recognize three Asheville residents for their outstanding service to their neighborhoods. This is the first time that the committee has made the Neighborhood Volunteer of the Year Award since 2019.
Okay, and we don't have everyone here, it looks like to me. Okay, but I'll read them in the order I have them. So the first one is Angela Young, she's not here. Angela Young is a neighbor in Hillcrest Apartments. There are many people that lovingly care for their community in Hillcrest and other communities like it across Asheville. Miss Angela Young, along with those that support, take action to show their fellow residents that there is love nearby and that it feels good. As they face real-life challenges, they could use all the resources that could be swung their way as they bring smiles across their neighborhood. Some of Angela's contributions include organizing a neighborhood council for the community, always volunteering to help with food distribution and events, and being a positive influence throughout the neighborhood. And Angela's not here with us tonight, but she will receive her plaque. Next we have Lee, and Lee, you're gonna have to help me say your last name. Arabian, thank you. Grove Park, Sunset Mountain. Lee helps bring neighbors together and to make everyone feel included. He doesn't want people to have a lack of knowledge about the neighborhood. Instead, this says he. Yes.
Lee is unable to be here this evening, so
Okay.
I'm representing Lee.
Okay, good. All right. Just to clear that up. So, he doesn't want people to have a lack of knowledge about the neighborhood. Instead, he wants people that live in a neighborhood to pay attention and see what is going on. He believes that when you buy a home, you're investing not just for yourself, but everyone in that community, to feel proud of where they live and make it the very best. He believes that you are leaving a footprint that will be remembered for many years to come and to continue to contribute to make your neighborhood the best for the life of the city. Lee is currently president of the Grove Park Sunset Mountain Association, which represents over 1,300 homes in the neighborhood, maintaining 3 parks along with 22 traffic islands and preserving over 100 years of Asheville's history. Did you want to say a few words there? Yes.
Thank you. I'm Wendy Hayner with NAC, and I am representing Lee Arvin. So growing up here in Asheville taught me the meaning of community. Asheville was smaller then and more reliant on a sense of community to move through the world. One of the reasons I wanted to move back was that while I enjoyed all the cities I have lived in, I miss the feeling of community I felt here. To be back and helping communities find their voice, foster relationships, and celebrate what we have here and with each other has been a joy and a really underscored why I came home. Thank you so much for recognizing people that contribute to our community in more ways than one.
Thanks for standing in for him. Okay, and Michael Stratton of Oakley. Michael led the effort to establish a neighborhood association. He volunteered his backyard for a community resilience garden, which donates harvest to Bounty and Soul. Michael was the primary coordinator for 2 neighborhood open streets events, which brought neighbors together to envision a new way to experience our shared spaces. Through leading committees, coordinating volunteer cleanup days, and tending the resilience garden, Michael makes our neighborhood more connected and vibrant. Congratulations. Please come forward if you're here to celebrate this Neighborhood Leadership Award here.
Yay.
Oh. Yay.
Look at that hair.
Well, I didn't prepare any comments, but I guess the only thing to say really is that if we're engaging in community organizing, it takes a community to be part of that, and there's a lot of people that were involved in everything that we've done in Oakley, and I just wish that we could share this with a lot of people, because obviously it's not something you can do by yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know. And he wants to look at his hand. It's cute.
Okay, this is a great start to this meeting, and that's very important because this is Gwen's last meeting with us forever. So, so we have to make it an extra special one. Right?
Right.
I'm just trying to make her cry all night long. Okay. Next, we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda or any questions, comments regarding the consent agenda?
So moved.
I'll second. Sage.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. Let me see if anyone is signed up. We have several people signed up to speak under the consent agenda. Folks who are signed up to speak, I'll just call you in order. You'll have up to 3 minutes to speak. Just watch the lights on the lectern. They are going to be green for go, and orange means you're approaching the end, and red and that buzzer sound means stop. And Maggie's the enforcer of that. The first person signed up to speak under the consent agenda is Honor Moore.
Don't start it yet, Maggie. Before I speak, don't start it yet. Could everybody from the Asheville Coalition for Public Safety just please rise for a moment to recognize our group? All right, thanks, guys. All right. We are the Asheville Coalition for Public Safety. We are a bipartisan group of Asheville citizens who support the Asheville Police Department, Fire Department, and all first responders. We live in many different neighborhoods and work to build relationships with organizations, businesses, and local government in order to create a safer community. We're working with CAN, SIBO, Downtown Association, and neighborhoods all over Asheville to specifically work on supporting the safety of Asheville. Neighborhood Scout says that you have a 1 in 24 chance of being a victim of violent crime in Asheville, and you have a 1 in 17 chance of being a victim of property crime. According to the Asheville Citizen-Times, crime is up 34% this year alone. I remember when we used to see a very strong police presence of police on bikes all over our downtown. Businesses in Asheville, my husband works with many of them, many of the downtown people he signed leases with, are reporting thousands of dollars worth of equipment stolen, people defecating and urinating around their place of business. My daughter's friend, who visited us this past summer from New York, commented on how many homeless people we have in our downtown, and she's from New York City. What's happening to Asheville? We're at a pivotal point. We're either going to tip one way or we're going to tip the other. We have 98 missing police officers from before the pandemic. We need serious salary and benefits incentives to attract seasoned police officers who want to work and afford to live here. We can simultaneously, of course, we can call out egregious policing when we see that happening, of course. But we also need to come back to the middle and support this basic governmental infrastructure. Let's face it, very few of us are cut out for this work, and we need the police. So, of course, please vote yes today for the grant, the mental health grant. But also, please proceed with an active plan to hire new police as soon as possible. We don't want to become Portland, whose Democratic mayor is already reversing decisions they made a few years ago. And also, I just want to say a quick thank you to Antoinette, to Shanika, and to Esther. Congratulations on winning your election. And thank you, Gwen Whistler, for your years of service. And thank you to all of you for the work you do. Thanks.
All right, the next person signed up to speak is Tom Tesser.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to finally meet everybody. I know you've all received some of my emails, and they are sent with love and kindness and gratitude for everything that you do. Bring your attention, do you remember the Surfside condominium in Miami that crumbled last year, killing over 100 people? And the board of that condominium was advised over and over and over by the engineers, you have a problem. You need to address this problem. If you don't address this problem, your building possibly might collapse. And the board did nothing. They did nothing. I'm going to bring you to another example, California. Tahoma County, California. They have a situation where they've just called off daytime patrols. They've done that because the sheriff out there for months was begging the county council to please hire officers, because if you don't, we are eventually going to have to not be able to have the personnel to do daytime patrols. And guess what? They no longer are able to do daytime patrols. This affects all of us. It affects all of us. I don't care if you're left, right, center, it doesn't matter. We all want a safe city. I will also tell you that to date, here's a statistic, we have 608 violent felonies committed year to date. Now, let me put that into perspective for you. If you look at nationwide, we have approximately 80 to 90,000 citizens. That's 608 violent felonies that were committed. Now, that is identified by the police, as I understand it, to be a crime committed against another person with a machete, can be nunchucks, can be a bat, can be anything, to do violent harm or death to that individual. That puts us at a city of 90,000 in the top 10% of the United States per capita.
This grant would support the mental and physical health of officers, therefore reducing suicide rates, reducing workers' comp claims, demonstrating better de-escalation skills, and having overall better decision-making skills. As much as we recognize how everyone's mental health has suffered over COVID, I can't imagine why anyone would vote no, especially considering the nature of policing and the impact that has had on the men and women who do this job every day. This seems like a measure that everyone should support, and I hope that this will pass unanimously. I want to thank those who sought the endorsement of the Police Benevolent Association for their election. It really shows that you were willing to put yourselves out there and be asked the tough questions by their membership, and we know it's not easy to get that endorsement. We're seeing a lot more support from council towards policing, but not so much in regard to one particular council member, Kim Roney. While her anti-police rhetoric slowed during elections, she was still unable to even mention police in regard to violent crime in any of her debates. How can we be serious about violent crime without mentioning police? A community paramedic or social worker is not going to respond to, prevent, or solve violent crime. In my opinion, respectfully, she should not be a member of the Public Safety Committee, and I would encourage her removal. The communities are more invested in public safety, advocating for policing, and encouraging you to follow through with ordinances already in place more than ever. Many of your constituents are feeling the pinch of crime all over the city. That is evident by those who showed up today. We want to continue to encourage you all to continue to advocate for us and for our public safety. I am encouraged by most of the panel being police supporters and for your latest decision to give the go-ahead on using extra funds in the budget to incentivize policing and advocate for recruitment. We all look forward to working together towards a safer city for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Dermott.
Hello. I have nothing prepared or written. I just want to thank you all for what you do. I'm standing here as part of this new coalition as a Democrat, as a practicing independent, and as a person who wants to continue to see everybody work together and continue to believe that supporting one group of people is not mutually exclusive to supporting another. And I'm speaking about the underserved in our community versus our police department. We need to help both of these groups, and we can do both of these things. We do not have to vilify an entire police department for the actions of a few, and we don't need to vilify an entire underserved community for the actions of a few. And I just beg of you to continue to act in good faith, to help both of these communities and to find common sense solutions. And we support Article H to continue to help the police department to improve in all of these mental health areas. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Babette Mays.
Good afternoon to the mayor, the vice mayor, and all of you on the council. I appreciate this. Is an honor for me to do this. I'm not with the coalition. I'm here about reparations. I am a commissioner for the reparations, and I'm on the focus group of the housing department. Gwen, Shiloh will miss you. Just thought I'd let you know, because you mean a lot to us through all the years that you serviced us. So I just wanted to say that I know that I didn't know everything that I needed to know when we started with the reparations, because it was so new to me, and I think to a lot of others. But I think that the progress that we're making is making a difference. It may seem like it's kind of slow, but we're very careful with how we move forward in this endeavor. Therefore, I would say that I know that it's coming up about a new project manager and a new team that's going to work, that I think that if we stay within the guidelines of what we've already been doing, even though there may be some changes, we will still be able to get the work done, because the work is already valuable and it's viable to what we're doing. So I would just ask that as you take in consideration of how this would play out, that you would say that we would keep the same thing. This is just my opinion, that we should keep the same company that we were using, even though there may be a transition, so that we can continue to work and to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dewana Little.
I'm actually here to speak, hey, council. I'm actually here to speak about the Reparations Commission and the decision that's before y'all as a part of the consent agenda. I'm actually, I want to voice concern. And I'm voicing concern, not that y'all need to reconsider, but voicing concern as a way of us moving forward and a process for us moving forward. Decisions that are made that impact the Reparations Commission should come to the Reparations Commission and not be a staff-led thing that we get told is happening to us. In reference to the change in management, that should have been a conversation, and it shouldn't have waited till our last meeting, 2 weeks before this meeting, to have that conversation. We should have been able to have that conversation and really have time to process and make an informed decision together as a commission. I think that's what our role is and a part of our responsibility, in this process between both the city and the county. And so I just want us to think about, as we move forward, if there are changes and things that need to happen that is going to directly impact, especially the management of the Reparations Commission, how we function with our facilitators, because they have been a strong asset to our focus area groups. And what that looks like moving forward, it should come to us for discussion. Y'all have an awesome Reparations Commission. Everyone is educated. Everyone has been doing a lot of work, brings a lot of skills and talents. That's why y'all selected us. You know what I mean? And so I just ask that y'all trust that we can make an informed decision in reference to these type of things. And it's not a last minute thing that come to us. And we are expected to process it and be okay with it in one meeting. This has been a few months of issue that we were unaware of, and we had no idea of until our last meeting, my full commission. And being vice chair, I heard about it the week before, but that's like still no time to have a real conversation with the people that y'all appointed to this commission, and they have time to process and make an informed decision. So I would just like to add that moving forward, y'all trust that we have the skills and ability to process that and have add value to that process. So when y'all get it, y'all hear in support of it versus we just want to keep moving, so we just go with whatever is out there since it's already happening to us, not with us, but to us. And we feel like it's going to hold up progress because we didn't have a voice. Thank you.
That concludes the number of people that have signed up to speak on the consent agenda. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second. Everyone ready to vote? All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. The consent agenda passes unanimously. Thanks for those folks who came down to speak on that. We have two presentations this evening. Under the presentation section, the first is a presentation of the fiscal year 2022 audit, and then we're going to hear the manager's report, Code Purple/Homeless Strategy Division update.
There were more people signed up to speak.
Oh, under the, do you want to check? Hold on one second.
Quite all right.
Okay.
And I'm dedicating this presentation to Ms. Whistler as her fifth and last that I've presented. So thank you so much for
This is the most exhilarating part of the evening.
So
Oh my goodness.
just so you know, we did have a Finance and Audit Committee meeting earlier where we went over a lot of this stuff in detail, so I will be going through a lot of this fairly quickly, but hitting the high points. So for the first thing, we're just going to talk about the financial results, then go through the sort of the compliance results. The last piece, since you've already answered this in your pre-meeting earlier with your signatures, we're going to skip over the performance indicators item. So first thing we have, this is going to be fairly quickly, your annual comprehensive financial report goes really top from bottom from the most broad to the most detailed. So the 220 plus pages that you have, the further you read, the more detail it's going to get. So if there's something that you're really looking for, flip on to the back, because that's where the detail is going to be. But as auditors, we're tasked with providing you with an opinion on your financial statements as to whether or not they are fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. We can issue 4 different types of opinions. They're listed here. The adverse, we can disclaim, we can issue a qualified or modified, or the highest level of assurance that we can provide, which is an unmodified or clean opinion, the city did receive this year. So just from the financial results, going through quickly, your general fund revenues for fiscal year 2022, the highest is in your ad valorem taxes, and then the second highest in the other taxes. Trending-wise, you'll see that that's pretty consistent over the past 5 years, with a slight upward tick across each major category. This is your tax rate for the year. Just to sort of qualify this, the overall tax collected, as you saw here, did actually go up. The rate itself nominally did not go up, but it did overall for not stay revenue neutral for this past year. This shows a comparison to your similar sized cities in the state of North Carolina comparing to fiscal year 21, so your rates are lower than similar sized cities. This here shows your property tax collected. You'll see that there was a dip in property tax, I would say, albeit very minor during the pandemic period, and it is recovering. And compared to your like-sized communities in the state, you are collecting at a higher tick than they are, as well as statewide. General fund expenditures, highest percentage there is on public safety, followed by general government. This is a trend we see with pretty much every government that we look at. And you'll see here that that trend has been the same here at the city for the past 5 years, with a slight uptick in the public safety this past year, primarily due to the incentive study for pay rates. When you go to your general fund balance, the major portions of that fund balance are broken down between non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. The highest portion of that here is your assigned, which is assigned by your management. And then your restricted by statute is one item that is set by statute and formula driven by what the local government commission provides each year. So I'll go through now. First, I'll stop at questions on anything I'm going through. Please feel free to stop me at any point because I have a tendency to go quick. So, which this is so exhilarating. I'm sure y'all want to hear more about it. But in any case, in addition, in accordance with government auditing standards, we're required to present a report on regulations, grants, contracts, as well as identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control for the preparation of the financial statements that we identified during the course of our audit. This year, we did have, I'm going to skip through these real quick. We did have one significant deficiency, which is a great improvement from previous years. This was one item specific to capital assets that was corrected, so there are no errors as it is presented in the financial statements as it is at this point. In addition to that, the other thing we were tasked to do in accordance with the State Single Audit Act and the Federal Single Audit Act, also known as the Uniform Guidance, we are required to issue our opinion on your compliance with federal and state grants, as well as identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control on compliance as it relates to those grants. This here is a list of all of the major programs or major grants that we identified this year and tested. We did not find any instances of noncompliance and did not identify any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in internal control related to that compliance. So we do have an unmodified opinion on both the Uniform Guidance and the State Single Audit Act. The last section of here is what we call our AUC 260, which you should have received a letter about this. This is our auditor's communication to those charged with governance. This goes through just a listing of items that are required communication by audit standard. I'm not gonna go through this whole list because this list we pretty much finish up here. But the main points here is that we did not have any disagreements with management. We're unaware of management reaching out to any other additional auditors. The biggest item that you had this year was the implementation of GASB Statement Number 87, which resulted in the bringing on of additional lease liabilities as well as lease assets on the books that previously were not considered assets or liabilities, but just operating costs. And then finally, we did not have any instances of disagreements with management that through the course of the audit. And overall, in this letter, you also should have a listing in the back, which is all of the significant accounting estimates that are utilized by management in the preparation of the financial statements. This listing here is, I think there's 9 different ones on there. It will show you, tell you about the estimate, how the estimate is made, and then the procedures that we performed as auditors to gain confidence and comfort that they are reasonable. So with that, I really don't have anything else to add, other than I want to say thank you to the Finance Department for really helping us out. Tony and his team really go out of their way to make our lives easier. As you saw, we tested 9 major programs this year, so it really went across the board, across the city. And we do appreciate the opportunity to continue to serve the city, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
I don't have questions right now regarding the audit, though I did notice that there's named weaknesses that could provide opportunity for issues in the future. But I did have concerns for our body and for staff about the things that I see here and what it could mean for our budget process moving forward. One is concerned that the presentation, this 32 slides, and the document at 207 pages was publicly available just today. That's not enough time for people to really dig into the information. I think when we have big documents available in such short notice that it makes a missed opportunity to engage and inform the public. But the second one is that the pie chart and the graphs that were available earlier in the presentation are already leading to a lot of questions around our budget priorities. For example, when we have a housing crisis, where is housing as a percentage? I know that it's buried in the other departments, but I think we could use this information and walk backwards so that folks understand, like, how does the percentage breakdown compare to cities reliant on the tourism industry? Are local taxpayers, disproportionately historic Black neighborhoods, picking up the tab for public safety and sanitation for our daytime population and tourist population? So now that we have more information here, I hope that we can move backwards when we dig more into the details for future budgets, and that might help with supporting staff for the weaknesses that we see in this audit, so we won't have that same weakness in the future. Thank you.
You have a perplexed look on your face because she's using the word weakness, but not in the auditor sense.
No,
I think you're using it more in the informational sense.
And I noticed the why there were the weaknesses named in the audit.
I was
But
also
he's
just making
talking-
sure there wasn't a question in there for me.
Goes downhill now.
Are we gonna have a new way of?
I just really wanted to make sure that everyone understood that, because if you look at this as one point in time, you lose the big picture, and we've come a long way.
And I think we just coined a new measurement of time, BG before Gwen.
Right. All right, any other questions? Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're still under presentations and reports, so we've got one other. That is the manager's report, specifically around Code Purple Homeless Strategy Division update, and I'll turn it over to the manager, Deborah Campbell.
So thank you and good evening, everybody. And Emily, I just want you to know you got a tough act to follow, but I know you are up to it. We have a very short report, and I think the mayor has detailed specifically the content and scope, but I wanted to introduce Emily as our recently hired division manager of our newly formed Homeless Strategy Division. And that division is housed in our Community and Economic Development Department. And I think most of you all know Emily is a rock star. And I mean this with all sincerity. The things that she has done as it relates to addressing issues around the unhoused is phenomenal. And so, no pressure. I will turn it over. Over to you. Thank you, Emily, for all you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And it's my privilege to work at the City of Asheville in this position, and I appreciate the opportunity. Emily Ball, Community and Economic Development Department. I'm glad to be here with you all tonight. I want to share just a few updates with you about homeless initiatives in our community. The first will be around updates as Deborah mentioned, updates in our division and our department. Also talk to you about the Code Purple shelter plan for this winter season, and then give you an update on the unsheltered homelessness consultant and the timeline for that presentation schedule. Key takeaways are that the city and partners across the community are collaborating to add capacity to respond to homelessness. We had a stronger, more participatory Code Purple planning process this year and currently have 105 Code Purple beds available, just 27 more beds than we had available last winter season. And then we also have the report from the National Alliance to End Homelessness in January, which will provide specific recommendations to help guide our collective efforts. That'll be on January 25th and will be a joint meeting between the city and the county to understand the findings and recommendations from that study. Division updates. Division was formed in July of 2022, so this is new for our department. Our division is comprised of 4 team members, so I have been in that division manager role, again, privileged to be in that position since July of 2022. We have 3 other positions in our division. One is a data and compliance specialist who was hired in September of this year. Training and development specialist. At the time that we published these slides, we were still interviewing for that position, but I'm so happy to tell you we just filled that yesterday. So we'll have additional capacity coming soon. And then our 3rd position, we're still interviewing for an integrated health and housing specialist. Our division's really focused on building community capacity to strengthen the response to homelessness. That's fulfilling the city's responsibilities as the Continuum of Care lead agency, and of course, supporting the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee. As you know, that's a committee that is jointly appointed by both the city and the county, and that serves as the Continuum of Care Governance Board, so it's really a key entity in our community for driving strategy and policy and funding recommendations to increasingly end homelessness. Since July of 2022, we have made a little bit of progress. So we have managed the community process to develop and submit applications for federal funding for homeless programs. That is almost $2 million in federal funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care program. That's primarily for permanent housing programs in our community for people fleeing domestic violence and for people exiting chronic homelessness. We've also, that application is still pending. We've also facilitated the community process for the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services Emergency Solutions Grant. It's about $128,000 that has been awarded, and that will support emergency shelter operations as well as homelessness prevention and rapid rehousing work. We've also initiated and facilitated community work groups, which is certainly our role. Again, we want to support the community in building that capacity to respond to homelessness. One of those has been the Code Purple group, and I'll talk more about that. Also a group focused on healthcare and homelessness. There's a lot of intersection between those 2 systems in our community and issues. We've been working really closely with outreach staff in the community to ensure that that effort is coordinated. We have a number of agencies who have outreach staff, and so want to be sure that we are connecting all of those dots, that we don't have, as we currently have, staff at multiple agencies who are working with the same person on different issues. That's an easy problem for us to solve through some basic coordination, so that's been a positive outcome there. And then also coordinating with system leaders, again, to ensure that we are really well coordinated and collaborative across our community. We have a lot of opportunity to build that out further, and it's great work for our division to do. And then lastly, supporting the National Alliance to End Homelessness in their very extensive data collection for the comprehensive needs assessment on unsheltered homelessness, and I'll talk more about that. Code Purple. As you know, Code Purple is a long-standing community shelter initiative to expand capacity and flex requirements when the temperature is at 32 degrees or below. This community initiative was started by shelter providers in 2009, and shelter participation is voluntary, varies year to year. The Homeless Coalition, which is a group of community members that meets monthly to address homeless issues. Homeless Coalition leadership facilitates communication and develops and publishes an operations manual for Code Purple. And in the past, neither the city nor the county have had. The Homeless Coalition co-chairs are updating and publishing the manual for community distribution. I want to really highlight the participation that we had in that planning process this year, which I think has really made a big difference for our capacity going into the winter season. So we had past Code Purple shelter providers, that's ABCCM, Salvation Army, the Rescue Mission, and Trinity United Methodist. Homeless Coalition co-chairs, really key referral and infrastructure partners that included Beloved, Mission Hospital, and ART. Emergency responders and law enforcement, that was APD, Buncombe County Sheriff's Office, and community paramedics, and then city and county staff. The upshot of the plan is that we have 105 available beds this winter. 50 beds for single men, and you see there's a plus there. We have at least 50 beds available for single men. That just means that they have the capacity to flex up if needed, if there is greater demand than 50. That's at ABCCM's Veterans Restoration Quarters. 50 beds for single women and women with children, and that is at ABCCM's Transformation Village. And then 5 hotel rooms for families as needed, facilitated by ABCCM. So a clear theme here of ABCCM participation in Code Purple this year. And overall, again, we have 27 plus, but at least 27 more beds than we had last year. Last year we had 78 beds across all locations, so really significant increase this year. And last year we also only had one night when all beds were filled. So that biggest snowstorm that we had last year was the only night when we filled up capacity. And so based on that, certainly things change over time. But based on the data that we have from last year, I feel really confident about the capacity that we have as we're going into this winter. Again, really strong planning process that resulted in Code Purple being available a month and a half earlier than last year and extending longer into the spring season. So as of October 15th, Code Purple is operational. Again, the Homeless Coalition notification is facilitated by the Homeless Coalition leadership. They call Code Purple 48 hours in advance based on the forecast on weather.gov, and they send an email notification out to their distribution list and also post on social media. That is a really well-established distribution list that includes service providers and referral partners, community members, media partners, certainly open to anyone in the community. On the Homeless Strategy Division page, we have a link to the Code Purple information, and there's some information there about how folks can get on that distribution list so they can receive that notification. The city's also posting Code Purple when that is called on the city's website. Additionally, based on the Homeless Coalition calling Code Purple, the county is sending a text alert out to people who've signed up for that, and the city is publishing on the marquee at the Harrah's Cherokee Center based on that coalition notification. Entry cutoff this year is 8 p.m. I want to actually take a moment to really highlight ABCCM and their very strong commitment to people who are homeless in our community, and really just showing up with so much capacity and flexibility this year to make this shelter available. I can't think of a time when we've had shelter access until 8 p.m. in our community, and that will really open up availability for a number of people who otherwise wouldn't be able to access that. So really, again, want to just appreciate them and everything that they've done to make this possible. After 8 p.m., law enforcement, emergency responders, the hospital, and outreach teams are able to facilitate late entry. So the intention there is that folks are in by 8 p.m., but as those emergency responders are out and about doing their work, if they encounter people who need shelter, they are able to take them after that entry cutoff. And then transportation, because both of these primary locations neither of these locations are downtown, ABCCM is coordinating shuttle service for people to be able to access those, and ART is providing free transit for Code Purple sites on Code Purple nights. In addition to Code Purple, we also have a winter shelter initiative that is developing in the community. We have 2 locations that are working to stand up nightly winter shelter, meaning that shelter would be open every night, not dependent on temperature, but would be open every night throughout the winter. That is ABCCM at Costello House, working on 30 beds for single men, and Asheville Ecumenical Winter Shelter, which is a group of faith communities that have come together to work on November 30th meeting. And then lastly, the update on the unsheltered homelessness consultant. Just a quick recap is that the City of Asheville has partnered with Buncombe County and Dogwood Health Trust to contract with the National Alliance to End Homelessness to better understand and address unsheltered homelessness. The city is serving as the administrative point of contact for that collaborative effort, and the project is fully funded by Dogwood. That project began in June of 2022 and entails a comprehensive needs assessment to understand the increase in unsheltered homelessness during the pandemic, to map and understand the homeless service system that exists right now, including current efforts by the city, the county, and partners, to identify gaps and needs with corresponding strategies and actionable recommendations to better respond to the crisis of homelessness, and specifically to decrease unsheltered homelessness. It's Project has had a very high level of community engagement throughout, including service providers, partner organizations, businesses, neighborhood associations, faith communities, and very importantly, people with lived experience of homelessness. The Alliance has conducted focus groups and surveys and site visits and really worked hard to get a comprehensive picture of the landscape in our community and what our opportunities are. The results of that needs assessment and the strategies and recommendations will be combined into a comprehensive written report and a public presentation that will be delivered in person by the National Alliance to End Homelessness on January 25th, 2023, from 1 to 4 p.m. That'll be at the Harrah's Cherokee Center. And this will be a joint meeting of Asheville City Council and Buncombe County Commission. Dogwood Health Trust and the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee representatives will be invited to attend. The Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, HIAC, will have a key role in strategy implementation, again, as governance board for the Asheville-Buncombe Continuum of Care. And they will hold a special called meeting on January 26th, so the following day, in person with the National Alliance to End Homelessness to really deep dive into what those recommendations are. The joint meeting, both meetings, joint meeting and the HIAC meeting, will both be public. Folks in the community certainly welcome and invited to attend. Again, key takeaways, the city and partners across the community are collaborating to add capacity to respond to homelessness. We had a stronger, more participatory planning process for Code Purple this year with 105 beds currently available, which is 27 more beds than we had last year. And the report from the National Alliance to End Homelessness in January will provide specific recommendations to help guide our collective efforts. It'll be on January 25th, joint meeting between the city and the county to understand findings and recommendations. And that is it for me. I feel like I always give you very long presentations, but I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Just wait till Will comes up next. Just kidding.
I just want to say this is amazing. So I heard there was only one night last year that all beds were full. And then we've also added more beds, and it sounded like a more variety and different types. And I think it's outstanding. I'm pleased and very thankful for everything that you just shared with us. And I know we're coming back with more information in January, but I feel really good about everything you just shared with us, and thank you. Thank you.
And Emily, one of the things that we've learned, I think, over the last couple of years, especially for those of us who aren't always in this work, is that cities that are successful around effectively tackling the challenge of houselessness are coordinated and are working together. And that's, what we've seen. Many people have sent me an article about Dallas and how successful they've been, but the key takeaway that I got from that article was housing, of course, is an issue, but the coordination and collaboration that is required, because you can see in this work how disjointed it can be because you have so many providers that are not naturally connected. And I think it's very confusing for the community to understand what the role of a city is in this work, and you've very well explained that as a convener and a collaborator and a funder, and providing that strategy. So thank you for that and for actually making that happen. So that's very critical.
May I ask one question? This comes up from time to time, and I want to keep sharing it. I know, so we have a requirement to do a point-in-time count once a year in January, and it keeps coming up that maybe we should be doing it more often, because certainly we need to do that for the requirement, but we may glean more information if we did it twice a year or quarterly, and I understand some other cities do that. Is that something you're considering?
Yes, I think that makes sense for us. So, as you mentioned, we conduct the count in January every year. It's historically been the last Wednesday in January. Last year we moved that to Tuesday in order to connect with people at Haywood Street's lunch on Wednesday, which is such a hub of activity, to ask folks where they slept the night before to be sure that we included them. So we'll do that again this year, which means that we'll look at the last Tuesday in January, so that'll be January 31st this year. I do think a summer count does make sense for us. I think we've had a long community conversation about that. It does seem, without data, that we have a population change over the course of the year, and so I think it would be really helpful for us to quantify that. We'll again point back to the great capacity that we'll have in our division to help support that kind of effort in the future, but I do think that makes sense.
That's great. Thank you.
I'll add that just appreciation for your work, Emily. Your leadership and your experience are an asset not just to this organization, but to the community at large, so thank you. I have been attending the winter/community/Code Purple shelter meetings, which are a rapid response because of the gaps and barriers, because we don't have an emergency shelter. So I think one of the concerns I have is when we talk about this as like an ongoing plan, I'm not sure that it meets the resiliency that our community expects during crisis. And specifically in slides 9 and 10, the appreciation for the 8 p.m. expansion can't be overstated. That's huge. But we still have workers, including service industry folks, who don't get off work in time as many shifts end between 10 and midnight. So we're still leaving people behind. It's not as far as we need it to go is one concern I have. There's a report that I sent from the first nights of Code Purple in October. The report was confirmed by the chairs as reflecting the conversation of the October meeting, and I'm just going to quickly read it because it is part of the public record, but also for the benefit of the public. 1, capacity. There are not enough beds. The VRQ was full at 10:30 p.m. The Salvation Army's 16 beds were not available. 2, transportation. The bus doesn't run late enough. While fare-free transit towards the shelter is appreciated, the fares are a barrier to getting back to where resources like food are available. So some may not go into shelter if they know they're going to become stranded the next day. Not all volunteers or staff are equipped with equipment to transport people in wheelchairs. 3, service outcomes. There are concerns that the non-discrimination ordinance violations at entry of shelter and throughout service are still happening, but participants may be nervous to report. Staff and volunteers need training like HOPE, crisis intervention training, REI, etc. 4, partnership. We need the government to come alongside to be in partnership when asking faith communities to do this work. Examples, expanded transit, since late night transit requires APD who are down staff, including fare-free trips the next day. 5, funding. $100,000 is a drop in the bucket and perpetuates a scarcity narrative. The absence of an emergency shelter, council and commission need to make more resources available. It is an issue that funding comes after services. 6, and the last, is overpromising, under-delivering. We need to review commitments to barrier removal, like pets being allowed and families staying together. So once again, I sent this to all the council members and to the city manager's office just because there are parts that are missing in this report from that one, from what happened on the first nights of Code Purple, who fell through the cracks, and the fact that there weren't beds available after 10:30 means if we say that there are beds available, but then they're full, something's happening there that's missing in the communication. And I think we could investigate that together when we come together for that joint meeting, which is why I would appeal to the public. That joint meeting of the city and the county that's happening on January 25th is an excellent opportunity to stay informed, to hold our hearts and our feet to the fire, to do meaningful work, to build on what's already happening, the coalition that's already happening, and make sure that our resources are taking care of the most vulnerable in our community, but also so that we can have resilient neighborhoods during times of crisis. So thank you for your consideration.
I'd love to speak to some of that if I can. Those are excellent points, and I have seen that document as well. Right after that community meeting, we had a coordination, sort of an after-action discussion about how those first few nights of Code Purple went. And I feel confident that we were able to work out most of those concerns. So the folks we included in that were ABCCM, of course, the Homeless Coalition co-chairs, ART, the county, community paramedics, and I think that's it. But some of what we worked out is that on the initial Code Purple notification, for example, ART wasn't included on that email blast. Well, that's an easy fix, of course. They certainly should always be included so that their drivers know to honor when people ask for free transit to Code Purple sites. We've worked that out going forward. I think for ABCCM, as you're standing up a large and complex shelter operation, especially when you're deploying a lot of volunteers who may be participating for the first time, they certainly had some, as anyone would, had some operational challenges with that. But I feel like that those have also been resolved. We really worked out clear communication between a lot of those stakeholders to ensure that if community paramedics need to reach someone at ABCCM at 11 p.m., that they have the correct contact information for that and are able to get the site manager who's there directly. So I feel like we were able to address most of those concerns. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I didn't include this in the slides, but you mentioned service workers who may be getting off shift late. ABCCM can certainly accommodate that. They just need to make those arrangements with folks in advance. So for anyone listening who might be in that situation, might be employed and needing late access because of their work schedule, there is opportunity to have that conversation with shelter providers so that they'll be able to access those beds.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, that concludes the manager's report.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move into the public hearings portion of this, of the agenda. The first item is 110 River Hills Road. This one has two parts. The first is a resolution to consider approving a land use incentive grant, and the second one is the rezoning. And we're going to hear from Sasha Vertinsky on the first one, and then we're going to hear from Will Palmquist on the second, and then we'll do the public hearing together for both of those. And then we'll have to vote on them separately. Okay, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. I'm Sasha Vertinsky, the Affordable Housing Officer with the Community and Economic Development Department, and I'm here to present this land use incentive grant request for 110 River Hills Road. Our key takeaways, as you all know, the land use incentive grant is an affordable housing incentive grant based on a development's increased tax value. This application was submitted by Orange Capital Advisors, LLC, for 153 apartments at 110 River Hills Road. The project is committing 31 units, or 20%, to be affordable for 20 years at 80% of area median income or below. And the project is also bringing other benefits, including rental assistance, including housing someone from the homeless by name list, housing choice vouchers, acceptance, solar panels, universal design, and with all of those qualifications, it qualifies for a 17-year grant. So just a little bit of background on the project. It's 153 units on a community space. The affordable units will be split between a mix of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments, 17 one-bedrooms and 14 two-bedroom units. Housing represents 100% of all the rentable square footage, and that's there because that's one of the policy requirements. Again, the affordability of 20% of the units, and this project is on approximately 10.9 acres of land on River Hills Road, and the current estimated taxable value after construction is $36.7 million. So here's the location. It is just off of River Hills Road. If you're coming off of South Tunnel and going up to one of the big box stores, Target, Dick's, any of those, that piece of land is there. It does have topography and wetlands, so it is a difficult site to develop, which I think is contributing to the cost of construction and the cost of the subsidy for this project. Here's a site plan. You can see near the top right, those are wetlands and being left alone. We have an apartment building with parking on either side. So here's the point summary for the project. Again, 20% of the units are affordable at 80% AMI, 10% of total units accept rental assistance. They are housing a person from the homeless by name list, which gets you another 5 points. The location, they are less than a mile from an urban center. In this case, that is the Walmart Center, which is designated an urban center in our comprehensive plan. And they are also less than half a mile from a transit amenity. They're near 2 bus lines on Tunnel Road. They are proposing to do energy efficiency, both with Energy Star and with solar panels. 20% of the units will have universal design, and they're building in a non-qualified census tract. So that speaks to us wanting to spread affordable housing throughout our community. So that totals 85 points, which equals 17 years of grant. Just a quick word about vouchers. 50% of the affordable units must accept housing choice vouchers. We do have, we discussed this at Housing and Community Development Committee this morning. We do have non-discrimination statement in our housing, that's trust fund, sorry. But we are working on getting a non-discrimination policy and legal wage policy. We all do it.
We do.
We conflate, I'm sorry. But we are, working these into our agreements with folks. Housing choice vouchers, people who have those vouchers are coming from the housing authority. So if somebody with a voucher gets a unit, not only do they get a unit, but it also opens up a housing authority unit for somebody else. So you actually end up helping two households. The household pays 30% of their income, and then the voucher makes up the difference. Currently, our area has 85 vouchers that are going unused because of lack of units. So slowly, we're watching that number come down. Last month, it was 88. Now we're down to 85. So there's some programming going on that I think is helping that. Plus, our units coming online will also help. So I jumped ahead. So here's the too many words on a slide of lots of numbers. Currently, the land there is about $500,000 in tax value, and they're paying $2,200 in taxes. Using an estimated taxable value of $36.7 million post-completion, the annual city property tax would be approximately $148,000. And then we subtract what they're paying today, and we get to $145,882 per year, and that's what we would grant back for 17 years. So the total grant, when you multiply that, you get $2.48 million over the 17 years, and that's equal to a subsidy of $80,000 per unit, which is right around our cap for our policy. And after year 17, the city would then receive the full taxes back from the project, or wouldn't the city would stop granting back taxes? Excuse me. This project has gone to Housing and Community Development Committee and was approved 2-0 on October 18th. The Finance Committee approved it 3-0 on October 25th, and we're recommending approval. Staff is recommending approval. So again, these are just the key takeaways. 31 units, which is 20% of the project, at 80% AMI or below, and a number of other benefits. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions. I know the applicant is here as well, and then you have Will's presentation too.
Questions?
I'm really glad not to have to ask for solar panels, but I just wanted to bring it up because I'm not having to ask about it. I am curious if it's for community spaces or for the residential as well.
We would have to talk with the architect or the engineers about that. I'm not sure that's finalized at this point.
Okay. And the second question I had is, if we had prepared the updates to the Leach, and we were not going to discriminate against voucher holders, would we be seeing 32 units accepting vouchers instead of 16?
They're slightly different issues in a way, right? So and Brad will correct me if I'm wrong. So a non-discrimination, part of the agreement and ordinance would basically say if somebody comes to you with a voucher and they qualify, you can't discriminate on that basis. It doesn't matter what unit it's for, right? It's kind of, in my understanding, like if they can pay the rent for a unit, you can't use the source of income as a discrimination. I think the accepting housing vouchers, and we also talked this morning about versus set aside, setting aside units that have to have a voucher holder. That's a little bit different than accepting housing choice vouchers. Do you want to add anything to that?
So just to say, and thank you for that, Sasha, that currently we do have, as Councilwoman Roney pointed out, a non-discrimination ordinance that applies to protected classes in a variety of settings, primarily public accommodations and employment. It does not currently include any particular and specific protections for what we'll call source of income, and I think that's applicable here, especially in the housing context. It doesn't because that's an area that we felt that the state primarily regulates. The state does have a State Fair Housing Act, It lays out its protected classes, which I will also note at this point does not include source of income as a protected class. There is, however, certain protections in place for applicants for housing, both in this state as well as nationally, but it doesn't specifically include at this point source of income. But that's the state legislation is why we have not included anything locally to this point.
And more directly to your point, I think the question was, would we have 32? I don't know what we would have in this instance because I don't know what the fair market rate would be. And I'm frankly not sure at this point the value of a voucher. So for purposes of discussion, let's just say, and I don't believe it is, the value is $1,200, but the rent is $2,000, then to answer your question, it would be no, because the voucher does not get to where the fair market value is. So again, it just depends.
And just to make sure if anybody's listening and doesn't understand, today in our housing trust fund policy, we do have a part of that policy says that projects that have housing trust funds in them, we have a non-discrimination piece in there. And that's because they're receiving city funds. We don't have that in our land use incentive grant policy, but we do intend to add it when we do revisions next spring. So just to be clear, we're not saying, I'm not disagreeing with anything Brad said, but the city funding allows us to kind of get in there and require that.
I was wondering whose that was. Is that yours?
It's all mine.
Big mug. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so now we'll hear from Will on the rezoning, and then we'll ask him a lot of questions, and then we'll hear from the public.
Alrighty. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Will Palmquist with Planning and Urban Design. I was going to keep this short and sweet, but now I know I have a reputation to maintain, so I'll be presenting on the conditional zoning petition.
Get the reputation back the next meeting, how's that? Well.
Absolutely. So I'll be presenting on the conditional zoning petition for this project. As shown here, the existing zoning is CI, commercial industrial, and due to the size of the project, a rezoning to the residential expansion conditional zone is required. As Sasha detailed, this is the project location on River Hills Road, south of 240 and Tunnel Road, near big box stores and adjacent to residential multifamily to the south and residential single family to the east. The future land use of the site, as designated in the city's comprehensive plan, is traditional neighborhood. No change in that designation would be required. And then here's the site plan of the project, again, showing the new proposed building, which is 4 to 5 stories as it's built into the slope of the site with 153 dwelling units. There's also a clubhouse building towards the front of the site near River Hills Road. A total of 223 parking spaces are proposed, which is a slight increase from the previous proposal of 210 spaces. As far as accessibility, new sidewalks are proposed along River Hills Road, being 5 feet wide with a 5-foot wide planting strip and 5-foot wide sidewalks internal to the site. And the project complies with all the landscaping and open space standards, as well as the tree canopy preservation standards, which are met through the preservation of trees on site. We have landscape plans available. Did want to talk through the eastern property boundary, which is one of the technical modifications that the project is seeking to address through the conditional zoning process. So a 20-foot wide landscape buffer is required where the project is adjacent to residential zoned areas. And this project, for about, I believe it's 250 linear feet, is encroaching into that buffer with the presence of the project's part of the drive aisle So that buffer is kind of reduced in half. The same amount of plantings of trees and shrubs are going to be provided within that buffer in any case. There's also a 6-foot-tall opaque fence to help with the screening adjacent to that site. The building elevation showing the 4 stories on the northeast elevation and the 5 stories on the southwest elevation. Additional elevations, and then showing also the building being cut into the slope profile view as well. As Sasha detailed, one of the project additions with the 20% affordable, totaling 31 units at 80% AMI for a minimum of 20 years, with half of those accepting housing choice vouchers. 3 technical modifications, the first being a reduction from the required 10-foot wide sidewalk standard to a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 5-foot wide planting strip along River Hills Road and 5-foot wide sidewalks internal. The aforementioned encroachment into the required landscape buffer, which is 155 linear feet along the eastern property boundary, and then that no bike lanes are proposed into the development. However, bike share pavement markings will be installed on the project's driveway. The project was approved with conditions at the September 19th Technical Review Committee, and was also approved with one condition at the October 5th Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, and that one condition being that bicycle share pavement markings be added to the entrance driveway of the development. The project is consistent with aspects of the Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, including the traditional neighborhood future land use designation by providing a mix of housing types such as single-family with accessory dwelling units, duplexes, townhomes, and multifamily apartments. The project also supports a number of goals in the plan, including that it provides infill development in the targeted growth area, increases the supply of affordable housing in proximity to schools, transit, and parks, and also eliminates gaps in the citywide sidewalk network. Therefore, staff concurs with Planning and Zoning Commission and recommends approval of the proposed conditional zoning. And I'd be glad to answer any questions. And we also have the applicant available this evening as well.
Questions? I still have that question about whether the solar panels are for residential or common areas.
Okay. Yeah, I'll defer that to the applicant. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, maybe the applicant can address the question around solar panels.
Good evening, council and staff. My name is Derek Allen. I represent the applicant. Applicant's representative, Jasmine Murphy, is here, as well as our engineer, John Kennard. Directly answering your question on the solar panels, it only applies to the common areas in that parking area. In addition to that, we also have commitments to and will incorporate electric car charging stations inside of that. The Luigi scoring matrix does not address that, so there's no credit or comment given on that. So as we look at the Luigi scoring matrix, I think those are 2 things that we can make more clear as we go through to give direction to applicants for that.
Thank you.
While we have the representative up here, any other questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Council, if you don't have any other questions, I'm going to, we have one person signed up to speak under public comment, and that is Kenny Fisher.
Hello, Council. Want to address this, start out by saying I am mostly for the project. I do have some concerns. I understand that we're, obviously have a housing crisis, and the fact that we can get 31 affordable units in this building is fantastic. A couple of my concerns, I live on 5, I also have 3, and I'm in the process of buying 1 Wood Avenue, which is just on the other side of Wood Alley, against that eastern border. That traffic light that leads into the River Hills development, it is already a nightmare, especially on weekends, and around holiday season, that South Tunnel corridor and into Wood Avenue is ridiculous. So I'm curious if any traffic impact study has been conducted to see what the addition of 150 vehicles or more, given that there's 200 and something spaces, might potentially have for the other folks that live, right in that area. That's one concern. One of the other concerns that is more pressing for me is the buffer. Looks like there was a variance given to move the building even closer to the property lines and Wood Alley. And with the topography of that area, I'm not exactly sure what type of buffer they can offer or how much of the tree canopy and wooded area will actually be removed, given the size of the project. But it will directly affect, I know, the 3 properties that I have, as well as the 7 and 9, but they seem to be MIA because they're out of state. My understanding is they're out of state and rent those homes. I've also brought up previously at Planning and Zoning the light pollution, given the parking area and the building lights, and the fact that a 5-story building is going to be essentially above my property. How that can be addressed with light pollution that's going to be basically shining completely, from dusk till dawn, down on the houses on that area. Hadn't really discovered any sort of way to, I guess, combat that. Most of the lights seemed, they had, I forget what they were called, but they were lights that specifically shown upwards, or I'm sorry, shown downwards to prevent some of the light pollution. And being that the building is kind of above where my properties are, I don't know how that's going to affect it. And again, if that buffer in place will, I guess, prevent some of that light pollution just shining directly on the houses, from dusk to dawn. Lastly, I know for the past 3 years that there is well, that's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Will, maybe you could speak to the buffer and the lighting requirements?
Sure. So that is correct that the buffer is proposed to be reduced in this section somewhat. The building is still set back within the required setback. The buffer is still going to be there and have the required plantings. It's more that the driveway is encroaching into about half of that buffer, which the presence of the opaque fence is trying to mitigate some of that proximity. As far as lighting goes, I don't think we have detailed plans on that yet. My understanding is that light generated on site is required to stay on site for the most part and not have spillover. And then, as mentioned, the downcast lighting to reduce light pollution as part of the Dark Skies initiative. As far as light generated from the building, I guess lights from windows could potentially spill over. That's not really regulated, more about street lights and area lighting. So that is something that could spill over somewhat, but it would not be, I don't think, a lot of light generation from that.
And how about a traffic study?
So I don't believe this project required one due to number of units and not hitting the trigger for a traffic study, which I believe is 100 vehicles per hour based on the uses proposed. So we don't really know what the impacts to that, to the roadway network or intersections would be at this point.
Did I hit all of them? I think so. Lighting, buffer, traffic, okay. All right. Council, we are now at the point, unless you have any other questions or comments, we'll need to do 2 motions. One, first would be a resolution approving the land use incentive grant to Orange Capital Advisors LLC for the development project at 110 River Hills Road.
Okay, I'll make it. I move to recommend that City Council approve the land use incentive grant application for Orange Capital Advisors LLC, 110 River Hills Road, with a per-unit subsidy of up to $80,000 and total grant value of up to $2,480,000.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then we need a motion to approve the conditional zoning from commercial industrial district to residential expansion / conditional zone for the construction of a 153-unit multifamily building.
I'm happy to make a motion. I'll move to approve the conditional zoning request for the property located at 110 River Hills Road from commercial industrial to residential expansion conditional zone, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meets the development needs of the community, and that the request, 1, provides infill development in targeted growth areas, 2, increases the supply of affordable housing in proximity to schools, transit, and parks, and 3, eliminates gaps in the citywide sidewalk network.
That was the motion. We have a second?
Sandra, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. On our next item, we need a motion to continue that item B until January 10th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Shanika.
And then, under the final item under our public hearings agenda is a public hearing to consider an ordinance to approve an annexation agreement between the City of Asheville and Town of Woodfin designating a non-contiguous area, that being 810 Elk Mountain Scenic Highway, desiring to annex into Woodfin. This is kind of a historic moment, although, Brad, make it historic. Take it away.
I usually stand in historic moments, Mayor.
So young.
I'm going to give the greatest gift any attorney can give and give a brief presentation on this because I think I can be fairly succinct. But because of that, and I know that Maggie is timing me, I'll take just 1 second of personal privilege on behalf of myself and so many staff members who don't get this mic to offer my appreciation to Councilwoman Whistler. It has been a pleasure to work with you. It has been an honor to be your attorney, and you will be sorely missed.
Get the box
Now-
of tissues. Wait, you got to haze the new guy. You got the new guy, Taylor
That's true.
Morris, that's here, a new addition to our legal division.
And his youth speaks to his longevity because he sat here the entire time.
I think he's
So
setting a
we
precedent.
do have a brand-new attorney that I'm proud to say has joined our legal department, Taylor Morris. You can wave to the crowd. I won't make you speak. I promise.
We noticed none of your other attorneys are here, so
Yeah,
Taylor, you might
shame
want
on them.
It's true.
to take note of that.
It's true. This will be in your report. And now for something completely different. The item that I'm primarily here to speak to you about is something that I can generally sum up in a few key takeaways. We don't have a slide for this, but this is consideration of an annexation agreement that is as exciting as it sounds. And I can tell you that it deals with a piece of property that has requested that the town of Woodfin annex it. This isn't something that the city is annexing, and in fact, the city has no authority to involuntarily annex. But in this case, there is a voluntary annexation request. Now, this particular property is not contiguous, meaning it does not touch either the city of Asheville or the town of Woodfin. It does, however, want to be a part of the town of Woodfin, and our state statutes will allow this to occur, but only if an annexation agreement is entered into between those two entities. So that's what we're here to talk about this evening, and I want to just show you first and foremost a couple of maps to give you a sense of what we're talking about. The small piece of property that is in yellow and outlined in red is the property that we're talking about. This is a property located at 810 Elk Mountain Scenic Highway, and for those in the know, this is where the Sourwood Inn is located, plus some additional property around it.
Say it again.
This is about liquor, but yeah.
The Sourwood Inn is located there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
She was asking why would this happen?
that's the behind the scenes
Okay.
story. Now, you will see also, interestingly, the town of Woodfin is also labeled in yellow there. You can see the outline in dark gray that is the city of Asheville legal jurisdictional boundaries. And if you can look at those two little arrows, which show some distances, it's important to note that this property is slightly closer to the city of Asheville than it is to the town of Woodfin. And that's really why we're here today, because The state statutes allow this property, here's one more aerial view of it, just to give you a sense of what it generally looks like perimeter-wise. But the town of Woodfin is permitted, along with any other municipality, to annex a piece of property voluntarily, even if it's closer to another municipality, if those two municipalities, the closer one the closer one who's not annexing it, and the more distant one who is annexing it, if those two entities enter into an agreement to allow the annexation to occur. So this is a request by not just the property owner, but the town of Woodfin to allow this particular annexation to occur pursuant to the state statutes. Now, I won't read all of this to you. I think the annexation agreement does follow the statute in that we have suggested it is a 20-year duration where the city is promising not to undertake any annexation activity or authority over this property. But I will point out one additional thing, not listed on this slide. I believe, in my personal opinion, that this actually is a very good thing, bringing this property more in alignment with some of your city goals, because bringing it out of county jurisdiction and into the town of Woodfin, it will immediately become under the authority of their new conditional zoning, which they have approved, as well as a new steep slope ordinance, which is more strict than the county's ordinance. So there's going to be many more land control, or in terms of development around this property as a result of this annexation. Now, in terms of cons, we can't come up with any. This essentially costs the city $0 because we don't have the authority to involuntarily annex. You are losing absolutely nothing. And as I said, this does bring this property under additional land development authority for the future, given the new administrative controls that have been approved by the town of Woodfin. So staff is absolutely in support of this. The town of Woodfin is actually voting on this evening as well, and may have already passed it at this point. But if council so agrees, we would ask that you approve an ordinance as required by law to enter into this annexation agreement with the town of Woodfin. Now, I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got.
Okay, Brad. I'm going to ask a question that probably a lot of people are thinking, but not going to ask. Why did they choose Woodfin rather than Asheville?
It's a question perhaps the property owner could answer better than I. Now, let me say, this is actually something that goes back much longer than just this evening, because part of this property was actually annexed into Woodfin many years ago. And in fact, at that time, city staff has researched records. There seemed to be a discussion with city staff about finalizing the remainder of this property into being annexed into Woodfin. But for whatever reason, that was never completed. This annexation agreement was never finalized. But at the time, it appeared that both city staff and the council that existed at that point were completely for this. So this property has actually already been essentially operating under the belief that they were part of Woodfin for several years. So they have been Woodfin in all but legality to this point. But exactly why they chose Woodfin, I'm not exactly sure beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
We're not as popular.
We're going to not
They
take it
didn't
personally.
invite us to the party.
Okay.
I know, right? So it make you feel funny.
All right, we any other questions? We don't
My
have
feelings
anyone
hurt.
signed up to speak under this item, so I'll open the public hearing and close it, and I'll entertain a motion to approve. Or,
Tell me.
I assume, anyway.
Go ahead, Gwen.
Unless we want to start a war with Woodfin. Go ahead.
I move to adopt an ordinance approving an annexation agreement with the town of Woodfin designating the Sourwood Inn property located at 810 Elk Mountain Scenic Highway in Buncombe County, a non-contiguous area, as not subject to annexation by the city of Asheville.
This is Sandra, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. We're going to move now on to new business. We will have a resolution to consider amending the city council committee structure, and our assistant city manager, Rachel Wood, is here to present this item to us.
Good evening, and once again, I'm Rachel Wood, Assistant City Manager. I am going to keep this brief because I acknowledge governance committee members, you've seen this presentation. This will now be your third time, but if you want me to go into any greater detail on any of the slides, please let me know and I'll be happy to. So a few key takeaways. Today we're going to be talking about the council committee structure. So just want to clarify for those listening, this is solely the city council committees, which of course are a subset of the city council. So we're not referencing boards or commissions. City councils review policy matters and inform and educate the council on city programs as well as community matters. Our current council committee structure has not been updated since 2006, and given the tremendous change that's occurred in the community as well as with the organization, we're recommending a review to ensure alignment with your committee structure and your priorities. A recommendation to council today will inform ongoing work that we're doing within the city of Asheville as an organization to align our work with council's vision and priorities. Additionally, the proposed resolution before you this evening recommends an annual review of the council committees just to make sure we don't find ourselves in the future with 16-year-old committees that aren't necessarily directly aligned with your priorities. So how we got to this point, back at your city council retreat in March, part of the recommendation that you gave us following the adoption of your strategic priorities was direction to reassess the council committee structure. Following that retreat, you had a work session in May where the council committee structure was discussed. And then, as I previously mentioned, we've gone to governance twice now, once in September and most recently at the October 11th meeting to discuss the proposed revisions to the scope as well as the committee structure. So proposed changes to the committee structure, there are three that I'm going to highlight. One is the proposed merger of the Governance and Finance and HR Committee. So under the proposed new structure, the revised title of this committee would be the Policy, Finance, and Human Resources Committee. We're also recommending to expand the scope of the Public Safety Committee to cover environment and safety, seeing that climate justice as well as emergency preparedness as the tie. And then with the freed up slot resulting from that merger of governance and finance and HR, we're proposing to add an equity and engagement committee to speak to City Council's goals pertaining to namely reparations as well as equity and inclusion. So this slide highlights the alignment to City Council's vision focus areas as well as your council priorities with the proposed council committee structure. The primary reason behind this scope development, and I do want to highlight the great work that the city clerk's office did. Historically, aside from just the charge of the council committees, we haven't had any detail pertaining to what should go within the scope of each of the city council committees. So the scopes that are attached with your materials this evening provide clarity around where, namely what committee these items should go to, and also helps us establish what that home base should be for key topic areas when trying to decide which council committee we should be presenting to. The scope language that's attached with your materials pulls themes from the council's committee descriptions, city council's vision and focus areas, as well as your strategic priorities in the comprehensive plan. The scopes that are attached in the materials this evening were vetted by department directors, and they shared their insights as subject matter experts on items that might be brought forward to future committee meetings. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the scope of each of the committees. I'll just highlight a few notes on the committees that we have changes, and again, I'm happy to go into any greater detail based on your request. So the Equity and Engagement Committee, of course, is that new proposed committee. Two key areas of focus will be fairness and equity in the provision of city resources, and then also making sure that we are providing community members with the opportunity to be informed and engaged in the policy-making process. A couple of highlights of policy topics to cover include reparations, our neighborhood matching grants program, engagement tools and technologies, as well as LGBTQ+ policy considerations. Environment and safety, again, this is that proposed revised scope of the current Public Safety Committee, so it would be expanded to include the contributions as well as conservation of natural resources, public health needs, ensuring resilience to climate change, and then the provision of public safety. Planning and economic development, the scope is largely unchanged. The great work that the city clerk's office has done just provides a little more detail and clarity to staff on the types of items that we would be bringing forward to that committee. Similarly, housing and community development, the scope of that committee remains largely unchanged. And then policy, finance, and human resources is just the combined scope of the current governance as well as finance and human resources committee. Boards and commissions also remains unchanged, and this committee has been in existence since before 1997, although we're not exactly sure when prior to 1997. So next steps, assuming the resolution is approved this evening, the new council committee structure would go into effect in January. I know the mayor is currently working on appointments to council members for those committees. And then ongoing, as I mentioned previously, the resolution does include an annual review, which can take place as part of or immediately following the annual city council retreat, just to make sure as you're updating your priorities that the council committee structure is in alignment with your priorities. Just to reiterate the key takeaways, council committees review policy matters and inform and educate council on city programs as well as community matters. Your current committee structure has remained largely intact since 2006. A recommendation to council today will inform ongoing work to enhance the organizational alignment that staff is working towards to make sure our work is aligned with your vision and priorities. And then the resolution does commit to that annual review of the council committee structure. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Okay, we need, we don't have anyone signed up speaking to this item, but we need a motion to approve. Don't all jump up at once.
I move to recommend that the Asheville City Council approve a resolution revising the City Council committee scope and composition and committing to conduct a regular review of council committee scopes following the annual City Council retreat.
This is Kim, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And then I'm going to turn it over to the vice mayor for the boards and commissions.
The Boards and Commissions Committee met earlier today, and we're going to recommend a couple appointments for approval. For the Audit Committee, no applications were received. The clerk's office will re-advertise, so I'm asking everyone here and listening, if you could please try to recruit 2 CPAs for the Audit Committee. We've been through about 5 iterations of this, and no one has applied. So if you know any.
I'm not a CPA.
You're not a CPA?
Not
Not anymore. She's not licensed anymore. We'd have to make it retired CPAs.
We might
I
make
mean,
an
we could do
adjustment
that.
for you.
I can move motion right now.
Hello.
But any CPAs listening, if you're interested in serving in a volunteer role for our city, we'll take your application. For the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, the committee will postpone the appointment and allow HIAC to look at missing sectors. For Human Relations Commission, no applications were received. The clerk's office is going to re-advertise. For Multimodal Transportation Commission, there's also a postponement there. Noise Advisory Board. The committee recommends the appointment of David Ledger. Can I get a second?
Kim, so moved.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? For the Public Art and Cultural Commission, the committee recommends the appointment of Pat Capes. Is there a second?
Second, Kappas.
Yeah, okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? For Reparations Commission, the committee recommends the confirmation of Eric Robinson and Tamara Miller as the neighborhood representatives of public housing communities. Can I get a second?
Sandra, second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And those are all for appointments, but in other business, we did hear a report from Alana Smith from the Office of Equity and Inclusion to revise Ordinance 4663 that created the Human Relations Commission. The committee recommends revising the ordinance to reduce the number of members from 15 to 9, allowing those who currently serve to fulfill their term. And also, the committee would like council to consider removing the language that requires HRCA members to be city residents. So
Go
do we need-
countywide.
Go countywide. Do we need a motion for that?
Those items are currently not on the agenda. Council can add them, but you could certainly also direct staff to begin bringing those forward to a future meeting of council.
Okay,
Could
well-
we, because I heard rumblings about the city versus county on that particular one, and there was some back and forth.
I would also mention that the HRCA was actually formed by ordinance, so we'll require an ordinance amendment to go through, which we usually do want to run through an additional council committee as well.
An additional council committee?
We've run that through what had previously been the governance committee oftentimes in the past. So certainly, if council wants to direct staff, we can begin that process.
Okay, go to governance. I
Well,
talked
the
about this too,
new version of.
The new version of governance.
Okay.
Okay.
Just
While
gotta-
we're on that, we did have a conversation about this at boards and commissions today, and my concern is taking it from 15 down to 9 when we have such a long list of folks that we attempt to bring their lived and professional experience to the table. My suggestion would be to bring it to 11. So I think that adding it to a future agenda would allow for more public engagement around what that might mean for the future of the Human Relations Commission.
But also keep in mind, it was the recommendation of that committee to reduce it.
It was hard for me to keep track during that, but it sounded to me like I heard a lot of no applications received and put applications back. I mean, we're still having this problem, aren't we? I mean, I know we're making slight changes to the council committees, but again, with the boards and commissions, we're seeing people roll off faster than we're seeing them come on. I just wanted to point that out. I didn't keep track, but it sounded pretty universal there.
Is there any direction that council wishes to give staff regarding the residency? Because if we do attempt to amend the ordinance, this would be the time to add that in there as well.
All I know is I was in a discussion, I can't remember which meeting it was, so sorry for those of you who were in it. I just remember there was some explicit language. I wasn't on council when that was adopted, but the language that they adopted was specific to a city resident. So I would want to know more about what they were thinking or why that was.
Who's they?
Whoever
The Blue
adopted the
Ribbon
council.
Committee.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
there, yeah.
But that was in 2018, and what we've seen with the members and applicants, more people who want to serve and can advocate for city issues have been displaced due to
Right.
affordability to the county. So my recommendation is if we're going to move from, if we're going to open it up to county residents, but we want people who have city interest, maybe we can see how long they have lived previously in the city.
Right, right.
But maybe their new residence is in the county, but the length of time they've resided within city limits.
We must have been in that same meeting because that was the counterpoint that we have
I
lost.
wasn't in a
track.
meeting,
Okay.
but I remember.
But yeah, that was the same
In
counterargument.
2018, when the Blue Ribbon Committee met, and I remember the motivation behind excluding it to city limits for that special interest. But things have changed
Yeah.
since 2018.
It's a great point.
So are we agreeing that we're bringing it forward for a future agenda on the number and the residency?
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay. Or it could go,
Just to us, yeah.
it could go, I mean, it could just come back to us with the,
Whatever council prefers. It's obviously already gone to one committee, so it could come straight to council if you prefer.
yeah.
That would be my
Let's
preference.
do
One question
that.
I just want to ask. Okay, this HR committee, so you're saying that you want to open it up to people in the county that's not really actual residents, right? So they do not have the same structure as the African American, that Heritage Committee, because we get 3 from council and 3 from city and 3 from Buncombe County. So HR does not follow that same guideline?
Some do, some don't.
All appointments, Councilwoman Kilgore, on that committee are made by the city right
Okay,
now.
okay.
And there is, in the ordinance, a requirement that every member must be a resident. So if council was going to either alter that to say that a certain number is permitted to be outside the city or that there is no residency requirement, all the appointments would still be made by this council.
Got it. Okay, super.
When you come back, could you please elaborate on what Vice Mayor Smith was referring to, whether or not we could, say a period of time when they, thank you.
Okay, so we're finished.
We're finished.
So we're now to the part where we're going to celebrate Gwen Whistler. I Could I call you Weisler? Just
No, just because nobody has
Are we,
ever figured that
we're standing
out.
up, are we doing
That's
it? Okay. It's gonna go down.
Hold on, Maggie, hit this. Thanks for you.
I guess I've never been over there.
Gwen,
Oh, yay.
so when Gwen, when Gwen started working on here, she wanted to be very conscientious about the environment, so she made herself this mug, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's got nail polish on it with her name. And for how many years now have you used this?
9.
So
Wow.
really, no one else wants to use it. I want to make sure you took that with you.
Thank you.
And you also get to take your nameplate. This is a tradition here, apparently, to take your.
Thank you.
And then Maggie, you'll need to explain what this is, but this is it's a very fancy pen.
It's a very fancy pen.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then this is the plaque that everyone will receive once they exit this body. In appreciation, Gwen C. Whistler, Asheville City Council Vice Mayor, December 1, 2015 to December 8, 2020, Council Member, December 10, 2013 to December 6, 2022.
Thank you.
And
Pretty.
Gwen, we also like to honor everyone who leaves this body with a
The
resolution.
picture.
And Gwen said, don't frame it.
Right.
So I
did it.
framed it.
You did anyway.
Anyway. But that's because there was such a special opportunity to include it with
It
our
was the picture. That's nice.
which is very nice. And so I'm going to read this so you can hear about Gwen's time. I'm going to sit down because this thing's heavy. All right. This is a resolution of appreciation to Gwen C. Whistler. Whereas Gwen Whistler served as a member of the Asheville City Council since December 10th, 2013, and whereas from December 1st, 2015 until December 8th, 2020, Gwen served as vice mayor of the city of Asheville. And whereas Gwen untiringly devoted over 9 years to the city of Asheville during a period of time that numerous projects were initiated through her leadership, which will continue to have a revitalizing and growing impact on the city of Asheville far beyond her term of office. In particular, her commitment to Asheville's economic stability and more inclusive, efficient, and strategic boards and commissions. And whereas Gwen served as chair and member of the City Council Finance Committee, chair of the City Council Boards and Commissions Committee, member of the Audit Committee, member of the French Broad Metropolitan Planning Organization, member of the Hub Community Economic Development Alliance, member of the Land to Sky Regional Council, member of the Metropolitan Sewage District Board of Directors, member of the Asheville-Buncombe Sports Commission, member of the City Council Governance Committee, member of the City Council Public Safety Committee, member of the City Council Housing Community Development Committee, chair and member of the City Council Planning Economic Development Committee, and chair of the Police Officers and Firefighters Disability Review Board. And whereas Gwen had also served as liaison to the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, Asheville City Board of Education, Civil Service Board, Firemen's Relief Fund, Asheville-Buncombe Historic Resources Commission, Mountain Community Capital Fund, Multimodal Transportation Commission, Noise Ordinance Appeals Board, Recreation Board, Sustainability Advisory Committee on Energy and the Environment, and the Asheville-Buncombe Air Quality Agency Board. And whereas Gwen has been a powerful influence for good in the growth and progress of the community, and whereas Gwen was unique in her sensitivity for doing what was best for the entire community, and she has courage in expressing her convictions, and a special way in dealing with complex issues. Special way. And whereas Gwen has demonstrated in many practical ways her deep and genuine love for the city and the surrounding area, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Asheville that the members of the Asheville City Council hereby express their gratitude to Gwen C. Whistler for the service she has rendered to her community, and that this resolution be entered into the minutes of the Asheville City Council and that a copy be presented to Ms. Whistler. And this is approved and adopted the 15th of November, 2022, and it is signed by all members of the City Council. So this is a sad moment for us. You were elected in 2013, I was elected
Yep.
mayor. We've served together for a very long time, and we've learned a lot from you. You are a steady hand. You're very wise at what you do, and you always remind us we can't spend more than we have, which is important to note. So, but I have very much appreciated how you've dug in and worked on so many really tough issues. We're going to see the results of that even going forward when we see what happens with I-26 and the connectivity with West Asheville to downtown and the bike ped features, those kinds of things that a lot of people don't pay attention to that you've worked really hard on. So I just want to say thank you, and we love you so much.
Thank you.
You're so cute when you grab it.
I prepared something really short, which is a big surprise. It's
Okay,
really short.
okay, here you go.
So, thank you. It's been an honor to serve the city.
Oh, that was good. Did she really, did Maggie hit it?
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay. I'm proud of all of council's work during my tenure. I'm humbled every day by the tenacity, creativity, and resourcefulness of our staff. You strive to meet and exceed Asheville's expectations and all of our wants and our needs, while working within the very difficult constraints of the state's laws and of our own resources. Thank you. I'll miss working with you. Thank you, Asheville. You stretch staff and electeds, and you make us better for it. Finally, I want to thank all the folks who love and support the council members, especially my husband, Lee. You didn't sign up for the untaken vacations, the interrupted meals, the just 3 more minutes calls, and the sorry I ran over the time excuses. But we appreciate your service and your sacrifice. Thank you.
Gwen is so annoyingly humble, she made us do that at the end after most people had left, so but we would have had a full house at the beginning. Okay. All right, okay. So we have public comment to conclude our, actually, we have a closed session after public comment, so we won't be quite concluded. So we have 3 people that signed up to speak that are ceding their time to Lonnie Blakesley, which means that Miss Blakesley will have 10 minutes to speak, and we'll begin there.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is the first time I've stood before you, and I do appreciate your time and attention this evening. I'm here today to express concerns about the impacts of pickleball play at Montford Park. I know you've heard quite a bit about pickleball, and I don't want to belabor this, but I am a resident. I play neither pickleball nor tennis. I have no dog in that fight, but I do live very close to the courts in Montford. And although I know that Parks and Rec has proposed a temporary solution, it mainly addresses the needs of the players, but does little to alleviate the concerns of the neighborhood. I did email each and every one of you maybe 10 days ago with a proposal, a partially signed petition, and some images of some traffic parking violations and other complicated situations that have been transpiring in the neighborhood for over a year and a half. I'm going to try and make this brief, but I'm going to read from this document because this was what I had sent to you, and in the event you hadn't heard it already or hadn't had the time to read it, I wanted you to have the full understanding of what those of us who live close to the park have been experiencing for quite some time. The Montford neighborhood, as you know, has always been a residential neighborhood with a prevailing environment of privately held property, houses, with both citizens who both own and rent buildings and apartments. This once serene district has been drastically degraded by the introduction of pickleball play on the tennis courts of Montford Park. Since that time, the rise in popularity of this activity has produced a fervor of enthusiasts who have descended upon and altered this one peaceful community and rendered it a relentlessly raucous, unsafe, and frenetic environment which has become unbearable to those of us who have traditionally lived and enjoyed this corner of our city. As the current rules and enforcement of park use are significantly lax, difficult to access, and or unenforceable, the residents of Montford are respectfully making a request to eliminate play of pickleball from Montford Park for the following reasons. Large groups of players drive to the courts and dominate the available street parking. Other park goers, as well as local residents who live on Cumberland Avenue and Cumberland Circle adjacent to Montford Park, rely on the limited street parking. This is especially true for the antique apartment buildings, which were built long before residents owned vehicles, and parking for tenants was not historically needed. As you know, Montford Park does not have a parking lot. Due to the limited parking and lack of concern for safety, the players do not adhere to basic traffic laws and create dangerous conditions and interfere with traffic flow. Players park significantly, less than 15 feet, and often directly on the corners of Cumberland Avenue and Cumberland Circle, limiting visibility and proper turning access for drivers, including emergency access vehicles, trying to enter the intersection. Oftentimes, players park up to 30 inches from the curb, blocking most of the lane, reducing the width of the street to a one-lane throughway, which is particularly hazardous as there aren't sidewalks for pedestrians on this stretch of road. Players also frequently park too near or directly in front of the water hydrant, impeding access in an emergency. Players often rush to secure a space, are careless while maneuvering for parking, and damage personal property, including other parked cars and homeowners' fencing and gardens. Players are also frequently block entrances to driveways and sidewalks of the private homes. Players frequently urinate and defecate in the park during the months of November through April due to the bathrooms being closed. The revolving tournament style play of these large groups means that the players are there for hours at a time without proper facilities, creating a dangerous biohazardous condition as they are unwilling to leave their game to go to the bathroom elsewhere. This does happen. My apartment looks out over the park. I see all of this all day, every day. Like, I'm the witness to all of these things, okay? A significant number of buildings adjacent and abutting the park, including 3 large multifamily properties, offer apartments for rent. The noise and parking problems are directly impacting the desirability of renting here, significantly depreciating the value of the properties and ability to fill units. Several online meetup groups and court schedulers encourage large groups of players to use the courts at once. It is not unusual for there to be groups of 16 to 30 players on the courts at any one time, typically for several hours of the day. Not only does this result in aforementioned parking problems, but creates an inordinate amount of noise where there are 16 players, each actively playing, and groups of spectators waiting their turns on the courtside, shouting and cheering for hours. Pickleball is an excessively loud activity. In violation of local noise ordinances, decibels can reach up to 75. Both the paddles and the balls are hard, creating a loud, rapid, and repetitive burst of sound, which is relentless and can be heard more than 1,000 feet away. Combine this with the shouts and cheers, you have a cacophony which disturbs everyone and interferes with residents' right to a quiet enjoyment of their homes. For hours, the park is open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. That's 16 hours a day. Montford is a historic neighborhood and is on the National Register of Historic Places. Pickleball is a new activity, the antithesis of historic, and it is not in keeping with the requirements of historic places and degrades the nature and atmosphere of this special neighborhood. Furthermore, restrictions placed on homeowners by the HRC do not allow for modifications such as new double or triple paned windows to be installed, nor for us to expand our parking areas. Montford Park rules dictate that each group may only occupy a court for an hour at a time, and court use is first come, first served, and cannot be scheduled. This goes completely ignored. Many players do not adhere to this rule. These large groups function in a proprietary way, as it is often works out that one group hands over use to the next group or play tournament style for hours at a time. The result is other community members, and specifically tennis players who wish to use the courts, do not get an opportunity. I personally am woken up by one group of men who arrive between 6 and 7 a.m. every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, who then play until 10:30 a.m. regardless of who is waiting. I have also witnessed pickleball players aggressively order off tennis players and children who are already on the courts playing, stating that they had scheduled their use and they needed to surrender the courts to them. After a rain, players will come to the courts armed with leaf blowers to dry off the courts, creating more unnecessary noise. Some players bring their dogs with them and tie them up on the courts or leave them in their cars, which is not only inhumane but also against law and court rules. Furthermore, the long hours of waiting frustrates the dogs, causing them to bark incessantly, creating more unnecessary noise. There are many other available courts and flat surfaces where players can set up nets, with dedicated parking in and near Asheville, where pickleball will not disturb local residents or create dangerous traffic conditions and violate noise ordinances. Montford is a quiet, historic residential neighborhood not well suited for this activity. Weaver Park, merely a mile away, is a significantly more appropriate venue to host pickleball enthusiasts, as it is only 1 mile away, has 2 dedicated parking lots with no fewer than 50 spaces, and is already in a noise-prone area due to its proximity to Merriman Avenue. This is obvious, a clear solution, and it is one that has been made available by the Parks and Rec Department already and will be implemented within the next 2 months. So therefore, even those of us who live in the neighborhood who do enjoy the park do have a very equitable, convenient, and appropriate place to play. 3 last things I would like to mention, which I feel are fairly important points, which this letter does not address, is the fact that pickleball is a game. It is not a necessity. It is a want. It is not a need. And the meteoric rise in its popularity does not supersede the established uses and needs of the city, its citizens, and its public spaces. Citizens need safe streets. We need parking for residents, rest, and the ability to feel free of incessant and unnecessary disturbances. Furthermore, it is an unrealistic expectation that the city should find ways to accommodate pickleball immediately. Pickleball players must wait their turn for the money to be found in the budget, to have it allocated, and to produce an appropriate venue for the activity. The idea that players have some right to have their wants addressed today is not only unfair, but smacks of insensitivity towards other more pressing needs and established priorities of the community. Lastly, just because enthusiasts are vocal does not mean that they are in the majority and require the rest of the constituency to relinquish our quality of life to accommodate their demands. All told, if there was an actual census of players versus non-players, I suspect the total of pickleball players to be less than 3% of the population. I truly appreciate your attention and consideration in this matter. I know you will see that this request is simple, affordable, and the only remedy to address the multiple issues Montford residents have been severely impacted by for the last year and a half. Thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody has any questions, you have my email address. Feel free to contact me at any time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully you've also reached out to D. Tyrell McGirt, the Parks and Rec Director. Yes, great. Okay. The next person signed up to speak is Tom Haviland. No, Tom? Okay. Jonathan Wainscott.
Well, Maggie's setting this up. I'd just like to say congratulations to you and and thanks for your challenge. Which one do I use here? This one? That one. All right. And as you know, the Asheville mayoral primary featured 5 candidates, so the incumbent and 4 challengers, and the Asheville City Council primary included 9 challengers with 2 incumbents for 3 seats. In contrast, next door at the Buncombe County Courthouse, the District 28 district court judges, there were 5 that were running, and there were none that had any opponents. This is what a ballot looks like, with no candidates challenged on that side, and that's the electoral history on the right. These are the 7 judges. Together, the 7 judges on the 28th bench have been in 26 elections, but only 3 races have offered a choice.
Wow. Isn't that crazy?
If no judges abort their term, they will have served 116 years on this bench collectively, with only 12 of those years having been by way of a legitimate choice for the voters. This equals 89.7% voter disenfranchisement. This past year, in 2022, the North Carolina general election had 34 races for Superior Court judges. Only 7 races had 2 candidates. 79.5% of these races offered 0% choice to the voters. And this is what a race with only 1 person in it looks like. The district attorneys were not to be outdone. They had 37 races statewide, with only 3 that were contested. That's 91.5% of these races offered 0% choice to the voters. And then the district court judges said, hold my beer, because they had 129 races statewide, with only 7 of them being contested. 94.6% of these races offered 0% choices to the voters. And as I reviewed the election results of the judicial agencies, I couldn't help but wonder, how can this possibly be considered democracy functioning well? While operating fully within the letter of the law, these agencies completely circumvent the spirit of the law and the soul of democracy. 0% choice is 100% disenfranchisement. To tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, is to call this a failed system. It's broken, and it needs to be fixed. And that's what something that's broken looks like. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Gwen, for your service, and thank you, everybody else, for all of your time, the candidates and the football people and everybody.
The next person signed up to speak is Kyle Davies.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Got another Montford issue here for you. I'm here tonight to speak to you regarding live music programming at Hazel Robinson Amphitheater in Montford, and the leadership we need directly from you to ensure it continues next year and beyond. I know this is something you all have had on your pulse since early this year, and want to ensure you all understand it's still an issue the community cares deeply about, and one that requires your attention and action. I'm with Plugged In Productions, a local business here that promotes and produces concerts in Asheville. We've been working with the Montford Park Players since 2018 to finally bring live music to the stage. This kind of really opened the eyes to Asheville and many members in the community as to what this amphitheater can be and how it can be utilized. So we expanded the utilization of the venue to bring other programming outside of just Shakespeare in the Park. It attracted much more community members to the amphitheater, getting the Montford Park Players and the amphitheater itself greater recognition as a unique space to enjoy the performing arts. Our concerts had an immense economic impact, creating jobs for, bless you, local artists, service industry professionals, and production industry professionals. It raised critical dollars for the Montford Park Players to support their mission and allowed them to make imperative upgrades to the venue, including repaving Jersey Street and making routine repairs, electrical upgrades, landscaping, pruning, clearing. A direct quote from John Russell, the executive director of Montford Park Players, said, "Given our mission of making theater available and affordable for all, and operating almost entirely on donation-based admissions, we cannot have afforded to do this repaving without the revenue provided by hosting these concerts." Our estimated tourism impact from our concerts resulted in a conservative estimate of $1 million to local businesses and the economy. But after several conversations with city staff, Parks and Rec, real estate, DSD, and legal departments around utilization of the amphitheater for live music, the city directed Montford Park Players to cancel any concerts for 2022, citing issues with zoning, noise, and the lease. But since then, there's been since a temporary directive and legal opinion of the city, there's been an outpouring of support. I understand you all have received hundreds and hundreds of emails from your community members, many of which are from Montford, that want this to continue. There's currently a neighborhood petition circulating in Montford. We're up to 80, and it's still counting. Many of those are directly in 100 feet of the amphitheater, so Cumberland Avenue, Madison Street, Cortland Avenue, Pearson Drive. We also understand the lease is up for renewal with the Montford Park Players, and we want to ensure that the voices of your community members are heard and considered. And we want to adopt live music programming into the lease, whether that's going to be now or as an addendum to the lease sometime in the near future. When we last spoke to Ben Woody and Dee Tyrell on August 25th, they both confirmed that while live music programming is not a priority for them in the park, it may resume if City Council authorizes and/or co-sponsors the programming per UDO 7-14-2. Thank you.
Thanks. The next person signed up to, my next person signed up to speak is Ashley Pierce.
Hey, how are y'all doing? Nice to see you guys. So I am also speaking on behalf of the concerts in Montford. As I'm coming in more of from the side of actually working the concerts, being a staff member there, and the supplemental income that it provided me, as well as to many of the other people that I worked with. Just looking into it from, say, your service industry, and you're making maybe $500 a week. So I would leave those shows making an average about $200. So you consider that, it's about a 20% pay increase per month. If there's 2 shows a month, that's a 40% pay increase. And that affects a lot of people. This is also, there's been people who have actually moved out of Asheville because they were relying on this income. One being John Graham, who is the active artist that would draw the paintings, paint the paintings. There, he moved to Chattanooga. He couldn't afford to stay anymore. So anything that brings local support, I'm in support of, supports our local economy, supports our local people, supports our businesses, supports our hotels. I mean, we had, I would say about 50% of the people I talked to when I was working there were coming in from out of town. They're staying in places. So they're supporting it, and you're supporting your local community. Another thing I'd like to bring up just real quick before I run out of time, Montford Park, I know so many people who didn't even know they did Shakespeare in the park until those concerts started. It's been going on 50 years, and people aren't aware. So I feel like that's another thing that, you get more people out there, they're gonna keep coming, they're gonna keep supporting it, and you're putting money in your local people's pockets. I think that's all for me. But I do hope that you guys support it.
Thank you. Sharon Summerall.
Good evening, council members and mayor. So I didn't know I was going to speak tonight, but I was listening to Emily Ball's report, and I'm coming to you once again as the beleaguered property manager of a shopping center on South Tunnel Road. I've been attending the community participation that they've been doing, and they've been listening to my concerns. What I see as a person that deals with massive camping behind the shopping center I manage, I've been dealing with it at one time with the police department. I had Councilwoman Ms. Roney come over and walk the property with me. And it's been going on for the 8 years I've been managing that property. And they are people that are camped, and they're in tents, and it's on private property. And I will go ask them to leave. I usually go with the police to ask them to leave. They abandon their tents. Sometimes they take them. I give them 24 hours notice. They leave everything. They leave the needles. They leave the trash. They leave everything for the property owner to pick it up. So I have put into our budget about $60,000 a year for overnight security for the property to manage it overnight because of due to the robberies and the vandalism. So real quick, what I'd like to say is for the outreach staff for her department is what is the protocol for private property? I would like to see a flyer telling me what I can do when I have these people that don't want to move, that don't want to reach out, that don't necessarily have mental illness, because I do have numbers to call when I deal with those people like that on the shopping center, because I don't want to feel and be heartless, but I have spent a huge amount of time corralling people, and that's not part of my job description. So I've talked with other managers on other shopping centers that are on South Tunnel Road and Tunnel Road, and we don't know what to do. So if we could have a flyer with a list, Who's going to help take care of the cleanup behind the property? Is that all our responsibility? Will the city help us out with the cleanup of the situation? Part of the property I'm dealing with is city, NCDOT, and private. So I've learned all the machinations on how to deal with NCDOT and the city when I send enough emails out. But then there comes the responsibility of us as the private property. So I'm needing a little more information when we get to January 25. I will be there, but I would like to know how we plan on dealing with the businesses that are large properties like I manage and what the protocol is. Now, I know I've talked with businesses downtown and they have a clear aspect of how to deal with it in downtown, but we have no clear aspect how to deal with it on Tunnel Road and South Tunnel Road. So I didn't know I was going to speak, but that's my 2 cents for today, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I see, Deborah, you're taking notes about that.
And I'm
so-
hearing this more and more, so thank you.
Jackson Whitfield.
Greetings, members of council. I'm also here to speak on behalf of Live Music at Hazel Robinson Amphitheater as co-founder and managing partner of Plugged In Productions. I would like to read our mission statement, in large part inspired by the potential of the amphitheater, and that is to enrich and unite the lives of all through invaluable live music experiences, creative arts, and community engagement. Now, an interesting fact. Bluegrass music was created and flourished in the hills of Appalachia by the fusion of cultures, Irish fiddle tunes, English folk songs, and the rhythms of traditional African instrument known as the banjo. Our musical programming and natural acoustics at the amphitheater even led and championed this traditional and traditional type plus music to reflect the roots of our region while also being conscious of our neighbors. Even to the point of at the sound ordinance meeting, which I'm sure you all remember, the neighborhood association actually called out Hazel Robinson Amphitheater as a venue which had exemplary sound management practices. So we also want to ensure with our programming that we're very inclusive, as diversity can lead to learning, understanding, and a richer life with music as a language that truly unites so many of us. Our first 2 shows this past concert season, which we unfortunately had to cancel, were a band from Japan. They were very disappointed they couldn't play there. And then local electro soul pop artist of color, Moses Sumney, who saw the amphitheater as the best fit for his music, or really possibly the only, as we still haven't been able to reschedule that show with him. A major missed opportunity on culture and community diversity and togetherness, along with other shows we had to miss out on as well. We provided free tickets to public servants, neighborhood residents, artists, low income, and learning disabled, all for a chance to come together. We hosted benefit concerts, and after learning more about the history of Stumptown, have been in direct communication in regard to how future events can benefit their causes. I would like to read a quote from Marissa Prococo, the executive director of Earth Skills, in a letter of support she wrote after hosting a benefit with us. They were so supportive and gave us a great nonprofit deal. This event made it possible for us to continue paying our staff as our organization recovered from COVID. Without them, I'm not sure how we would have managed this year. I was so sad to learn that the events of that kind are now banned at the venue we've always had to move to a more expensive location, making our fall fundraiser much less effective. I deeply hope you consider to allow the amphitheater to be used for more community productions like the one we hosted there. So many people came together, had a wonderful time outside. It was magical, and we were able to raise $13,000 for our organization.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Please consider.
Eleanor Patron.
I'm going to speak a little bit about the pickleball situation too. I live on 295 Cumberland Avenue. I am speaking on behalf actually of my entire family. We are woken up regularly at 6 o'clock in the morning from every day of the week. It doesn't matter, it can be the weekends. And I have 2 sons, they need to sleep, they go to school. I'm an educator, my wife is a healthcare worker. And it's really gotten to the point where it's impairing our general life. And we, feeling as we pay taxes and we have the right to this. We've actually gone down at 6 o'clock in the morning and asked people to try to be quiet. It hasn't really helped very much. Also, the parking situation is really a safety issue because our Cumberland Avenue from that point down to Catawba has kind of become a one-way street now because they're parking on both sides. So that's all. It sounds like I recently had a friend come at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning, and she said, oh, there's a tournament going on? I said, no, this is every day of the week. This is what it's like. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Honey Simone?
Hi, this feels very official. Hi, my name's Honey. I'm here to share on behalf of Plugged In Productions as we navigate the red tape of sound ordinance at the Hazel Robinson Amphitheater. I'm the co-creator and owner of Different World, a creative studio and performance space where we value the importance of space for our community. In fact, it's not just important, but crucial to the survival of locals who are constantly feeling pushed and priced out of their own city. I've had the firsthand honor of experiencing the vision Plugged In Productions is creating at the Hazel Robinson Amphitheater during a special event called Backyard Drag. Created by my dear friend Cherry, Backyard Drag started quite literally in their backyard, but I remember the day when we peeked out the window to find the backyard completely full of friends, family, and new faces. It became very clear that this was filling a gap that not only is a space for queer performers of all forms, but what seemed to be a portal of ones being thrown, cheers, and queer joy. We had outgrown the backyard, but wanted to still make it feel at home, and I remembered that Jackson was producing shows, and what better place for drag than a theater? They met us with welcoming energy that prioritized us, the creative underbelly that fuels this community. The event was truly beautiful, and performing on that stage was healing. So I encourage you all to acknowledge in order to keep spaces like this alive, we have to be able to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last person signed up to speak is Tony Walker.
I'd like to first let y'all know I thank you for plugging me in with Red Oak drug community. It's going real well, and the staff has received me real well, and also the clients have received me even better. But it's still like a volunteer job. I don't mind volunteering, but I really have a gift. I really have a purpose. I really have a God-given talent that I want to share. But I also have bills too. And, you know, as a youth, I chose to live a thug life, a street life, so I don't really have connections to try to help me get to where I need to be. I have dreams, and I want them to become reality, and I don't want them to turn into nightmares. And I remember when I was out in the streets, it was good people like you that told me that once I changed my life, that you will help me, and I really do trust and believe that y'all will do that. And I'm just here because I don't want to be forgotten, because I know y'all see hundreds of people on a daily, and please don't pass me by. I don't just do this for me, I do this for my family, my community. I hold my whole community on my back. I come from a broken community, a lost, traumatized community, and I believe that they need to see some type of hope from somebody that's coming from the community that's trying to do the right thing to inspire them also. And that's about all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think this is the first time we haven't had pickleballers, but then we kind of still had pickleball.
Yeah.
Anti-pickleball.
Yeah.
It's a little different
This time.
Yes. We do have a closed session motion. Maybe Brad can send us some information with what's going on with Hazel Robinson at some point to catch us up, because council's not directly in the loop on where that's at. So if you could send us some information about what's going on with that, that would be great. And pickleball, or anti-pickleball noise, people. And I do think we need to continue to have communications with D. Tyrell, and usually he's here, so this is his one time he's not, because I think there's some acknowledgement in the pickleball community that this Montford situation is untenable, And now that the rest of the courts are getting striped with pickleball, they may be moving. So anyway, I have to say, I'd never imagined one day we'd be sitting here listening about pickleball noise pollution in Montfort, but yes, we are. So anyway, so we have a closed session motion, please.
I move to go into closed session for the following reasons. 1, to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statute. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.10A1. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.10E. And 2, to consider the qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment, or conditions of initial employment of an individual public officer or employee or prospective public officer or employee. The statutory authorization is contained.
All right, we'll adjourn from the closed session.